Good morning. Hi, Alex. Hi, thank you everyone else for joining us for this. This is a little introduction to North Point Distillery. Happy to be joined by Alex this morning. Hi, Alex. How are you?
Not too bad, Peter. How are you getting on today?
Very good. It's been really pleasant working through talking to the different brands. I think the Scottish rum scene at the moment is just ridiculous. There's so much going on and so much variation in there. But we'll hold that point. We'll come back to it a little bit. Please take a moment. Tell us all about yourself, about the company, and why on earth you'd set yourself up to make something as complicated as rum.
Yeah, I suppose if I could go back in hindsight, I don't know if we'd be launching in 2020 again, given the year that we all had. But yeah, I suppose North Point Distillery from the onset is kind of the new kid on the block to the Scottish rum scene. Um, it was launched by myself and my co-founder Struan Mackey. And we are actually both ex-tech startup guys from London. And we met down there and we really shared a passion. Now, Struan is a recovering consultant from PwC. I'm a recovering sales director for tech startups as well. And we really met and had this shared passion of not only whiskey, not only rum, but a lot of other spirits as well. And basically, this kind of just evolved as time went on until at one point Struan said he was going to move back up to Caithness on the far north coast of Scotland. And I said, well, that's fantastic, Struan, but what are you going to go do up there? And he said, I've always had this dream of building a distillery. To which I kind of remarked, well, that sounds a lot more interesting than anything I'm doing right now. So do you mind if I kind of tag along, see if I can help out? Um, so that kind of coffee meeting turned into a lunch meeting, which turned into a dinner meeting, which turned into a very hungover myself the next day. But suffice to say, I think we had a bit of a plan. So then in February of 2020, we formally launched North Point Distillery on Company's House, and we started our kind of site acquisition and planning out of investment. Obviously, with the year of 2020, it in hindsight was probably not our best plan, but it was a good show of persistence is what we tell our shareholders now, and really it led to us coming across a fantastic site, hiring the right people, and then in August we were on site and we were fully making rum and eventually actually gin. So that's kind of our life up until then in a nutshell. And then our first products hit the shelves just before Christmas of last year. So yeah, we've been around just about 6 months with our products on shelves now.
That is fantastic. So I sort of alluded on it's worth checking out your social media because you make a great job of showing what's going on up there. But it feels like there's a decent level of investment. You mentioned shareholders.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's all in. There was no half measures with this then.
No, it was kind of pitter patter. Let's get at her, as my Canadian parents and friends would say. Yeah, it was you know, whenever I've done anything, whenever Struan's done anything, it's always do it right the first time rather than pay the cost twice. And for us, we always understood how to scale a business. And to do that, obviously, you need the right capital, you need the right team, and you need the right product. So if you have the right team and the right capital, ideally, you can figure out the right product. But also, we want to make rum the right way, or at least what we deemed the right way, because everyone has their own way of doing it. Um, and for that, we wanted a proper still. We wanted a multitude of casks. We wanted fermentation tanks, batching tanks. We wanted all of our bottling on site. We want to be handcrafted, sustainable. So, and the more sustainable you are, unfortunately, that means the more money you have to spend.
Well, certainly up front, yeah. I think we all thank you for it in the long run, of course. Certainly, the planet does. Are you doing the distillation yourself?
Yes. So for our pilot rum, currently we are in the process of narrowing down the distillation ourselves. Right now we are using different blends, but we are working on doing distillation on the Demerara and the Muscovado. but we do run it through our still at least twice on our spiced rum and at least once with our pilot rum. And then our pilot rum, which everyone will have in their cask aged box there, spends at least 6 months in its own whiskey cask. That's hand selected from a number of different Highland whiskey producers, which kind of gives it that unique taste to it. But yes, we're narrowing down right now that fermentation process. We have a number of casks that have actually already been sitting and having already been fermented, but we are narrowing down that process even further.
So you're making it from molasses?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just thought Muscovado Demerara. I was like, sounds like sugar.
Yeah, exactly. But no, we really like that kind of British styling of molasses. I think that fits well within what we're trying to accomplish.
So I'm going to pour this out. I've had these drams sent to us, the tasting set, and I've deliberately not opened them because I kind of feel like if I open them, I might drink them before the event, which is a problem. But also it's because it's kind of nice just to kind of get a little tasting or a little nosing as we go. So,
yeah.
You can tell us about have you got a special fermentation in process, or are you kind of like you say you're working through them? Is it a short, a long setup?
I think we tried both. We tried quite a short setup because we understand that this is a younger rum, but we also understand that this is going to be serving as our base moving forward. So we are actually going for quite a long fermentation setup now. So we've actually just bought 2 more batching tanks that are actually ex-Johnny Walker, that are about 2,400 liters each. So that will allow us to do that slightly longer, slightly larger fermentation setup that we aspire to kind of hit. So for us, that's probably the sweet spot.
Cool. So, I mean, intriguingly, this has young rum written on it. Obviously, you've not been going for very long, but so before we get to that, distillation. So you've got a pot still?
So yes, we have a bit of a unique still. So it's electrically steam generated. So it's slightly different. It's kind of going in our vein of sustainability. But it's a pot still with a whiskey helmet into a rum/brandy column into a gin basket. So it's a bit of Frankenstein's monster. But suffice to say, it's the only one of its kind on planet Earth right now. At least that's what we've heard back from the still manufacturer. They still want to license it out and say this is their new design, and we keep saying no. We really like being unique. Please just leave it with us. But for that, I think that allows us to do anything we want in our distillery. Yeah. Gives us a great deal of flexibility. It also gives us a great deal of flexibility with our spiced rum because we have spice hooks. We could do in-pot maceration, or we can do a botanically vapor-infused rum if we so like in the future. But it allows us also to get some really nice, smooth spirit through that rum column.
Yeah. So I guess you do a double distillation, or does the column? Because we see these combination stills you can do some clever stuff with, you know.
Yeah. So it depends. Right now we are working through our process. Currently we are just doing mostly pot, but we are working through the process of doing a double distillation involving that column still as well. Primarily around that idea of working on our own fermentation and full distillation process.
Yeah. So basically what we're saying is that things might be delicious now, but follow you guys because things can easily change up over the next year or so.
Yeah, we've just kind of hitting our stride in terms of the standardization of flavor, if you will, which I think is interesting because we've always said we're small batch. Things can change. And for example, our pilot rum, the one that you're tasting right now, is massively evolved since we kind of launched it in December. It's become a richer product. It's become more complex and more well-rounded, and we're incredibly proud of its different flavor profiles. Has really kind of more conjoined together rather than split apart, if that makes sense. It's not at war with itself.
No, I think that's right. So I mean, from yeah, I mean, I'll invite you to offer your thoughts on it. But I mean, I'm getting a lovely fruity, like sort of like apples, pears, cooked apples, pears, and caramel note to it. and it's like lovely and sweet onto the palate. I guess you're not sweetening. It doesn't feel like it's a sweetened product.
No, we don't do any artificial coloring or any sweetening in this. So, I mean, to give you a bit of a process, what we're trying to do is, in part, use Scotch whiskey distilling methods with rum. Because Stu and I are both massive whiskey heads, as I'm sure you can see from my shelf behind here. Quite a lot of rums up there as well. Don't you worry. But for me, it's this idea of, you have two amazing spirits that I've always referred to as cousins. Rum and whiskey in my mind go hand in hand. And especially within their pedigree of distillation and the amount of time they've been around and their importance on British culture as well, especially in Scotland. And for me, it's this idea of, how can you take a rum and distill it using both Caribbean methods, which obviously on the far north of Scotland we can't explicitly do in a lot of ways because we don't have the heat, the temperature, and the climate. But apply that, but also use a lot of Scottish whiskey aging techniques, because that's what we do have. And that's where we think we get this really unique blend of potentially a rum that is also appealing to a whiskey drinker.
With each sip, a grip is building up, and I think you alluded earlier on that for something so young, there's not a disjointed spirit oak kind of imbalance that can happen. There's a nice integration there.
Yeah,
that lovely sweetness onto the palate, it really is rather good. Or other things, ex-bourbon cask barrels, or
no, we use ex-whiskey refills. So we are experimenting with a number of different casks. Right now we are experimenting with a bourbon, which I have to say is amazing. We have 2 ex-Maker's Mark bourbon barrels in our distillery right now, which I keep looking at like I want to steal them. Then we have port hogsheads, as well as port pipes, so 500-liter port pipes, which are absolutely fantastic. We also have Chateau Latour. We have Islay casks, which are really interesting because they have this massively smoky, peaty character to them. But we also have a fair amount of sherry butts on site as well. We have a couple of brandies, and right now we have another order of about 35 casks coming in at the end of this week that we're going to be playing around with. We're also doing a little bit around Madeira, which I know a lot of people are viewing as this next hot topic item with rum, which I would have to agree, it pairs incredibly well. But I think for me, the proving ground is really on that whiskey barrel selection. Is, can we do something around that whiskey refill, the Isleys, the bourbons, and then I would love to get even more specific of getting like a Campbelltown, a Speyside, and like really narrow down these different tasting profiles and see if they're different. And if they're not, then I look like a bit of a fool, but at least I know.
Oh, they can always form blend components. Aged rum never's going to go to waste, is it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's wonderful. I'm genuinely excited. This just kind of adds to the last few years in the UK, there's been a rise of quality craft distillation going on. And it's early days. There's no real huge amounts of age stock anywhere in the UK, not from rum point of view, but like it feels like the future is really very exciting. How do you, where do you sort of, have you looked around at the other folks doing things on the island? I mean, you mentioned you do a spice rum. I guess that's because commercial necessity as much as anything. But
yeah, I think for me, it was probably the product that I disliked the idea of the most. I know that sounds very odd. But it was this idea of, are we making it just for the sake of making it? And if that's the case, I'm going to say no. So I said, everyone, we have effectively 2 weeks. If you can make a spiced rum that I like in 2 weeks, great, we'll put it out.
Wow, that's not a lot of time.
No, but it was one of those things where we were quite under the gun. We're a very young team. We're quite dynamic. And I said, look, if we're up to the challenge, great. And if we're not, that's not a problem. But it's this idea of, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it right. And that means we're using whole botanicals, whole spices. We're not using, vanilla essence. It has to be whole vanilla pods that we fair trade and organically source. So we put a lot of stipulations in place that we all shared. And actually what came out of it is now an award-winning spiced rum. So we're quite happy with it. And I will now kind of say, hands up, I was wrong. We're actually so happy with it. We've just relaunched its brand as part of the Pilot family. So it's staying with us forever because it was a distiller's edition to start. But yes, so we did that, as well as our gin kind of had the same rules around it. Had to be sustainable, had to be entirely sourced. For gin, we also wanted it locally foraged. But yeah, going back to the Pilot rum, it's interesting that you mentioned the amount of aged rum right now in Scotland, and particularly in the UK, of locally aged is probably not where I would have expected to see it. If I'm being brutally honest, I would have said, we're quite far behind. But if anything, we're aging probably more rum than most producers in the UK right now, and we're quite a small distillery, as I'd like to say. So I think this idea of normalizing that, aging your own rum on site, controlling those variables, controlling the flavor profiles, to me, that just makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm kind of speculating a little bit, but I suspect the Dark Matter have some, just with the sheer amount of time they've been running, have some old stock, but it's an absolute rarity, No, it's cool. So are you open for visitors, or will be once the world settles down?
So we are officially open for visitors now, as of last week. We just had to make sure that everything was finally put away. Unfortunately, we basically moved into what is formerly the ex-US naval base up just outside of Thurso, called Forest Business and Energy Park. And we moved into effectively what was now a office building. So our landlord is a bit in shock that we've installed a 4 meter by 4 meter roller door, all the flooring's ripped up, everything like that. But it was one of those things where you wouldn't recognize the building anymore going into it. And now it's starting to feel like a bit of a distillery, which is always helpful, I would say.
Yeah, but you say we've only been going like something like 6 months, so it's early days. Yeah. The visitor center can be put in due course, I guess.
Yeah, we have our shop built and everything like that, which is great. But yeah, probably hold off on the visitor center, because any more repairs or construction, I'm probably going to start aging like milk in the desert there. So
That's fantastic. So what do you think to the scene at the moment? I mean, I assume you've chosen Scotland for a reason other than, like, I mean, you would like to make your rum there, particularly because it's like it feels like the hotspot in the UK right now.
So, as I said before, I mean, Struan was born and raised in Caithness. I think there's a fantastic story of Caithness in northern Scotland and its involvement in rum, as the kind of rum trade would go around the northern tip of Scotland through the Pentland Firth. And that's why our bottle's named Pilot, is the pilots were those individuals that would guide ships through. And there's some amazing stories of pilots actually kind of being I would say gently kidnapped on those ships and escorted all the way to the Caribbean, and long thought perished on their journeys, and would come back many years later as rum traders and rum merchants themselves. So there's this fantastic history to it, fantastic story. But I also think this idea of, if I'm going to age anything in Scotch whiskey casks, I want to be close to those Scotch whiskey casks. And I mean, my heritage is very much steeped in Scotland, as you can probably tell from my appearance. So it's nice for me that I can finally blend in somewhere. But it's also this idea of, you have this beautiful rural community where, you can make a really large impact on that community just by doing the right things in your business. And I think it's just this idea of, being now the most northerly rum distillery on mainland UK has kind of got a fun ring to it. So, I'm happy that we can call ourselves that.
Yeah. What do you think for the next 6 months, 2 years? What's the future hold for you? Just knuckle down and make a load of rum, I guess.
Yeah. I think in the next 6 months, I would like to see another distiller's edition or two come out and flex our creativity. But certainly in the next 2 years, I would love to see our kind of amber rum starting to be launched. We've done a lot of tips and tricks on aging our rums, everything from radiator control, which sounds ridiculous, but we have done it. It's one of those things where we're like, find the hottest radiator. Now we stack, casks around it. Unfortunately, now that they're all filled, I can't do that anymore. But we've made it sure it's along this very long wall, which has about 5 radiators attached to it. And then we do a lot of nylon depth charging. So it's a nylon tube with mulched cask, and we put that into the spirit as well, so we get the most surface area contact with it. Now, for your whiskey, of course, that would be a big no-no, and I'd be dropping off of this Zoom call ASAP. But for rum, it's really interesting because it allows us to kind of analyze the barrel that the spirit is going into, seeing, okay, what's that profile? Does it fit the pilot profile and what we're wanting? And then going, okay, this is the subtle changes we need. And then we have basically 4 different mulched barrels that we can choose from. And we use different ratios to make sure that as close as possible when we go to batching, that this will taste like our pilot rum, not just some other rum that we put into the same bottle. So I'd like to say it's an exact science, but this is where the art of it comes in, and understanding, okay, what ABV do I use on this? What level of char does this barrel have? Making sure that that barrel is pre-steamed, etc., checking for leaks, all that very annoying thing. It's almost like having a baby that doesn't cry, because I'm still waiting up at night next to it, seeing if it's going to leak or not. And then ultimately making sure that, throughout the process, checking it every 2 or 3 weeks, making sure that it's evolving where it needs to, doing slight taste tests, understanding, okay, this is great, or this needs to be changed. Ultimately, I would love to try and see if we can do like a Solera aging at some point, and flex our creativity in that. But for me, the next 2 years is, as you said, kind of is knuckle down, see how much rum we can make, because for every 3 casks that we fill, 2 are going away to being aged, so we don't even touch those, and 1 is being used for our pilots. So we're starting to really build that stockpile of inventory for ourselves. And now I'm quickly understanding that my plan for this building of, oh yeah, it'll last us a couple of years, is very quickly stopping at about 7 or 8 months.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it is a big move, isn't it? I mean, the that investment for the future, like you say, you've all the cost of making it, the cost of the barrel, and everything, you're going to put it away and kind of, and then try and forget about it as best you can, But I guess maybe a bond out of sight might just kind of help to.
Yeah, we are looking at bonds out of sight right now. Certainly for that. And also, I think for me, it's this idea of, in the next years, and this maybe ties into your idea of this, the scene as a whole. I would love to see a representation body of Scottish rum distilleries coming out, and I would like to see a little bit more collaboration with that in industry. And we're currently talking to a number of different distilleries that we could potentially collaborate with, because I think the idea of doing that makes everything move better. If you're all working in unison to the same goal of creating amazing product that has not only the rum stamp on it, but the Scottish stamp on it, then I think you're going in the right direction. And I think everyone saw, obviously, the gin boom, and they went, wow, this is really cool. I could go make either a ton of money or a really cool gin, or both. And then everyone started reading, oh, rum is the next gin, kind of like, and it felt like we were caught up in this kind of gold mine mentality, which is fantastic. It's very exciting. But for me, it's always this idea of, as long as you are making the spirit right, you are taking your time with it, your branding is honoring, the history of that spirit as well, or at least your version of that spirit, and then you're open to collaboration, then I think that there's a winning formula for not only Scottish rum, but UK's rum as a whole.
Exciting times. Well, it's safe to say that Ross, Colin, Kit, and Paul have made great strides in the Scottish Association of Rum Producers. So feels like some chaps there to speak to if you haven't already done so. Cool. I think it's wonderful. I am super excited to get up there and have a little poke around as soon as I get the opportunity to. For my part, that pilot run was delish. I look forward to drinking more of that in future as well. So this is obviously pre-recorded before the event. Hopefully we'll be seeing you during the weekend on the sort of Ask the Producer panels and things like that. So hopefully lots of other folks will kind of come in and have questions to stretch you a little bit further. So thank you very much for your time, sir. I really enjoyed that. Thanks for everyone else for tuning in.
Cheers. Thank you, Peter.